Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Rob, VP of Customer Success here with Sync Context. Today we wanted to do something a bit different to what we've done historically here on our channel. You've seen case studies, but today we wanted to sort of break our most recent one down a little bit, to personalize it a little bit, to add some context to it. You may have seen this one on our LinkedIn channel, or maybe our company page under our blog. But again, I wanted to kind of go through this over via video just to add some context to the study itself. It's from a much larger project. We kind of just took a snapshot of some of the progress that we've been making. And we wanted to highlight a few things. So the first thing, obviously, is the results. Now, the results are significant, and we've done a few case studies in the past that have highlighted the impact of skustream. So you may have seen those, but beyond that, we wanted to look at the the implementation process of skustream. So for a lot of people, and I hear a lot of feedback, not just on say cloud-based systems, but just any enterprise system. Even if the results are expected to be significant, the process of implementation is always something that people are not looking forward to. So I wanted to dispel that myth that skustream might be a bit of a hassle to implement. It's actually a very streamlined process. Like any system that manages data and uses data, there's still a few things that need to be in place. There's still validation. There's still those steps. It is a cloud-based system that works with your operational data. So there are steps that need to take place, but I think you'd be surprised on the timeline from the very start of the implementation up until when you can start to see value from the system. So I wanted to look at that. And through this case study, I'm also wanted to show you the flexibility of the functionality. So it's not just a daily use system. Of course, that is the main aspect of it from an operational standpoint. Is a daily use system to help you slot daily items, new items daily, to look at potential reslotting opportunities on a daily basis, and also there's a ton of insights that you can get from an analyst perspective. But it's much more than that, and I wanted to show you a bit of a snapshot of how other clients have sort of used it. So without further ado, let's kind of get into the case study again. I'm just going to go through the document itself. This is the same document that I'm sure you've probably seen if you've seen this case study. So let's go down to the first step here. So the first thing I wanted to review here is the hassle-free configuration, and this goes for even highly complex distribution environments. So the one that we've highlighted here. You can see there's 4 sites. We did it in 2 phases, so we brought on 2 sites at a time. And you can see by the stats there, we have countless product zones. In this case, it's 27, 26, 26, 27. So there's lots of product zones here, different warehouse areas to consider. There's a lot of SKUs. We're talking about 21,000 SKUs, 15,000 SKUs, 19,000 SKUs. So a lot of different items, obviously, within each of these zones. And these are high volume operations too. So anywhere from 130,000 cases shipped all the way up to 780 per week. So these are high volume, highly complex operations. And in this case, the primary system users, the number of users trained, and again, that's another thing that's kind of sticks out as well, is that for say an LMS or different enterprise system that touches hundreds of users, or network wide tons of users, skustream is a little bit different. So when we train users, we're only really talking about between 1 and 3, maybe 5 users. This normalizes typically when you're getting into like the first 5-6 weeks after onboarding, after training. This sort of normalizes to maybe 2 to 3 primary users. Maybe there's an analyst on top of that. But the footprint of skustream when it comes to training, when it comes to the resources that are actually touching the system, it's very minimal. So you're not having to train your entire team at your warehouse. There's obviously leadership is involved, and then there's the individuals that are actually using the system, in addition to maybe some regional analysts and things like that. But from the very start, when we ask for the setup file, so whenever a site is determined to be the next site or the first site that we're working on, from start to finish, it's usually around 3 to 4 weeks. Now, of course, there's some validation that needs to happen. There's some zoning if the operation is redoing zoning. A lot of ancillary work, ancillary benefits happen. So like when it comes to putting in a system like this, a lot of companies will take the opportunity to potentially rezone their items, especially for like a grocery operation, for example, where they're saying, well, we haven't really been that strong on adhering to food safety, or breaking up certain products. We have a lot of issue with product damage. A lot of that is from just how the products are zoned in the first place, or how they're recognized as a damageable or fragile product. So a lot of this is basically the operations of the company going back and saying, hey, we'd like to take this opportunity to rezone our items, to maybe rezone our layout, maybe entertain a new slotting strategy, like commonality. There's lots of things that can kind of go into the setup, and once you set up the system, of course, it can be overlaid on top of what you currently have. That's one of the benefits of it, is that there's really minimal disruption. It can optimize what you currently have in place, or we can use the system to sort of look at opportunities to optimize prior to the system going in. So those are the two options, but usually from the point where we get the setup files here on our side, it takes about 3 to 4 weeks before you can start to see the site be set up. And usually at that point, at the end of the 4-week period, we're usually validating the baselines. We're validating the last 4 weeks of data, looking at SKUs, making sure we have the right data in place, the right baseline in place. And at that point, the users are not in it, but the analysts, the project leaders are in the system, looking around, validating the screens. So again, it's really just a month. And in this case, we did 2 sites concurrently. So for phase 1 and phase 2, we're really talking about 2 months to bring on 4 sites. And why that's important, obviously, it's not just the minimal resources as compared to other projects in terms of bringing on a site from start to finish, but also, if you're talking about the results that we're going to be looking at, being able to set a site up in 2 months to get the results that we're going to be talking about is extremely impactful, because that time to first value is extremely important from a change management perspective. So the time that we can show you value, the easier it's going to be to sort of influence further change, which is impactful for a lot of operators, for a lot of project teams that are trying to influence this. Say if we're working with an operational excellence team that's looking to get buy-in from different regions, the time to first value is extremely important, and that's what I wanted to also highlight as I kind of go through this as well. But the first note is 3 to 4 weeks from start to finish. Sites be brought on concurrently. It's a very streamlined process. And as you can see here, the profile of the site, it does outline that they're fairly complex. Skustream does work with any type of material handling system, whether it's automation, pick modules, you name it, we can work with it. So I wanted to sort of highlight that these are fairly complex operations, and that it really doesn't matter. It doesn't affect the timeline at all, aside from considerations, of course, that need to be taken into account. So now we get into the onboarding, and looking at the headline here, training a handful of users is all it takes. So as I said, usually when we enter into a project or a site, implement skustream into an operation, it differs. So some operations may have one user, a single user. That's typically the slotting person that takes care of all the new items, all of the reslotting opportunities. And some users or some sites may have 5 users that have a subset of the items. So it really doesn't matter, but the idea is that it really only touches 5, maybe 1, maybe 3 users. It's very minimal in terms of the people that are really involved in carrying this out. So the other thing here is that it does ramp up. So once it actually is in the operation, so once we've trained the users, the ramp up period typically for I've heard stories. I haven't been involved in many implementations outside of skustream, but we've certainly walked through a ton of operations. We've heard a ton of stories about say WMS implementations, LMS implementations, and while it's not fair to compare those two, those are two different systems, but oftentimes you're looking at a year, you're looking at months of on-site work that a lot of people just don't want to do again, despite if there's great results afterwards. It's still very, like I said, a resource intensive process. It's not the only thing these people are doing. So taking them away from their job to their day-to-day to implement a system, regardless of the results, is always a tough ask. So looking at this case study, we were able to get through in this particular client, and this is pretty typical with any operation that we deal with. Is that after training takes place, the ramp up period when the users are actually using the system to sort of ramp up to find, it doesn't happen overnight. Obviously, they're trained. It takes about 2 hours to train the users. It's a very streamlined training process as well. But even after that, it takes about 2 to 3 weeks to sort of build that habit. Especially for the more experienced inventory control or analysts, personnel. It does take a bit of time for them to sort of get used to having a new system, having all this data, getting out of their old habit of say bringing up spreadsheets or doing it the old way. So we usually encounter an onboarding period of around 2 to 3 weeks, which again I think is very fast for a system like this for learning a new system. And the typical, is about 2 to 3 weeks, but in this specific project, the client was hitting numbers within between 1 and 3 weeks. So that means after the very first week of implementation, they were hitting those expectations. They were hitting their slotting numbers. They were hitting their new item expectation, their reslotting opportunity expectation, even their dollars that they were planning on saving. After the first week, they were seeing those numbers come in. Now there are some keys to a successful onboarding. Again, it doesn't just happen overnight. The system, does its job, but it still requires, some effective user training. Typically, this is done hands-on. It doesn't have to be. We've done remote training that's done very well. Hands-on, if we can do it either from SynContext, we offer training, obviously. But from a lot of our projects, we usually hand that off to the project team, because it does seem to be a bit more effective if the team that's leading it, whether it's the OpEx, whether it's internal project team, it does seem like the communication internally goes a long way to sort of set the tone within the company, as opposed to it being an outside partner. The next one is access to resources. So within skustream, we have a lot of resources, a lot of training resources, videos, user guides, and we also offer, obviously, we have a customer success department that's dedicated to helping the users hit their goals, and also a support department that's very reactive to, quickly reactive to any issues that come up, especially in the beginning stages. Which is obviously very important. The reaction time, whether it's internally within the client, and again, we're working with a great team internally that was supporting users, and beyond that, we were sort of echoing that as well on the SynContext side to make sure that the users, if they encountered an issue, we're trying to get to it within a reasonable period of time, so that there wasn't that friction to using a new system and also having the system work differently than what they're expecting. So very important. The second one is to make sure there's clear usage expectations. This one is really up to the client. Now, obviously, when we go through this, we know that there's a certain percentage of items. Typically, it's about 1% of items in order to keep an operation optimal. We find that it's around 1% of item variety that should get reslotted per week. It doesn't take much. But we do know there's a certain percentage of items that should be reslotted on a weekly basis in order to maintain optimization. Now, of course, you can choose to do more than that, and we have an example of that a bit further down. But we do know that there's certain usage percentages or usage expectations that should be done. Now, some clients may isolate a certain, they may say, well, we want to minimize replenishments, we want to minimize forklift labor, we want to minimize pick shorts, we want to attack food safety. If it's a grocer, we want to rezone items because we're getting a lot of damage. So there's lots of different reasons for the implementation of skustream in general. And that's why it's very important for the client, the internal team, just to look at their expectations to say, within the first week, we're going to be ramping up, and in the second week, we're going to be, holding you a bit more accountable to the usage of the system. We want this to be the only system to be used, so there's no flip-flopping around between the old method and skustream, which is, again, it's very important. This should be the only system used. It's from a habit building standpoint, but it's also the way that we can know that it's working. So again, these are systems that are they're not going to use themselves. It's only, you're only going to get the results if you actually do use the system. So we do track usage. So that's another thing as well. So, instead of having these expectations and then just wondering, how they relate to the usage, or the results that are being brought forth, we not only have the expectation of how much it should be used, but also we track how much it actually is used. So that's why it's very important to just set the expectation that it should be the only system used, because we want to actually have that feedback loop of how it's working, what sort of results are being achieved, and if items are being slotted outside of skustream, it's very hard to do that. So that's the first two. The third one, I should say, is clear communication and prompt support. So I discussed support up top, obviously, minimizing friction when it comes to getting things going, but also clear communication on, again, the usage expectations. Obviously, that has to be very clear, but also on the idea behind the implementation of skustream. So what's the idea behind it? What's the thought process? Why are we implementing skustream? It's not to replace users. It's actually quite the opposite. It's to empower users to do a better, to have the tools to do a more value-driven job with slotting and with looking at opportunities to optimize the operation. So we're giving the tools to the users that have typically not had the right tools to really drive value from their job. So we want to clearly communicate the idea behind the project to make sure that everybody's bought in from a change management perspective. It's not just here's a new tool, use it, without any sort of guidance on why this is being done. So that goes a long way. From a client perspective, it's not something that we can obviously influence it on this context side, but a lot of clients, the ones who have been getting these results right out of the gate, is that they're very good at communicating this with their internal teams of the reason behind the system being put in place. Moving further down, we get into the numbers a little bit. So again, we're talking about consistent and scalable savings post onboarding. Now this is the same 4 sites. This is basically a 9-week average. So we looked at 9 weeks post onboarding. So the onboarding is 1 to 3 weeks. And we wanted to sort of look at the normalization period, as we're going to call it. So this is the expectations by site. Usually you're going to have expectations, but after the first, say, 4 or 5 weeks, you're going to sort of normalize usage. You're going to see how your team is using it. You're going to see the power users typically. As I mentioned before, you may have trained 4, but maybe 2 end up being the power users of the system. So you're going to sort of see that normalization period. And we wanted to show you, while the results are, you're going to start saving money from day one, you're going to start to see the potential of the system from a long-term perspective, within that, after the 3-week period, within, say, the first 5, 6, 7 weeks, you'll be able to see these averages come into play. So this is, again, a 9-week average. We wanted to show the new item weekly averages here. So site 1, site 2, site 3, site 4, the same thing for reslots. And we did this from a maximum perspective. So we wanted to show you the maximum number of new items slotted per week per site. As you can see, we're getting into big numbers, so 300, 177. Some operations are just lower volume. They don't get the same number of new items. Essentially, the expectation for new items is that all new items really should be slotted with minimal exceptions through skustream. This makes sure that there's, the avoidance. You don't have to slot it and then move it a week later once you find out, where it should go. That's very reactive. Some systems are very reactive that way. skustream has a very robust new item slotting capability. where it actually shows you, it looks at a profile of the item to show you where it should go based on the item attributes, or maybe even the expected movement for the item. So there's a ton of information that users have access to when it comes to new items. All new items should be slotted through skustream to avoid having to move it again to optimize it right out of the gate. And then from there, obviously in the first sort of 5-6 weeks, you're going to see a lot more opportunities before you get into, say, a year after the system is being in use. Obviously, you'd see the number of opportunities go down just by virtue of the site being more optimized on a consistent basis. But as you can see, the numbers are pretty high as well in the first 9 weeks for this client. So maximums, we're getting into 500, we're getting to 421. So this is per week again. And the averages, we're looking at about 160. This does fluctuate, 190. So around 150 to 200 items per week being reslotted. So there's tons of opportunities, tons of savings being had, along with them actually slotting their new items through skustream as well. So we're putting up big numbers, a daily use system again. This is very encouraging. This was very encouraging for us to see for the first 4 sites being implemented for the project. Like I said before, if you can show that value right out of the gate, it's very easy for the internal team to influence through their regions and get further leadership buy-in. So this is very important, and this was extremely encouraging for this specific project. Now, of course, there's more than just dollars at stake. There's, in this case, if it's a grocery operation, it could be, food safety adherence to minimize, complaints from the retail partners, for example, on damaged items being shipped based on them being picked and put in the wrong position on the pallet. So there's lots of other reasons for optimizing a site beyond savings, but in this case, the savings were, of course, significant. We were looking at for 4 sites. They were doing on average $55,000 per week, just with these 4 sites. I think it was $1,350 per week per site. So that equates to about $55,000 per week, which is I will tell you, it's a pretty good ROI. And this is again the first 9 weeks. So imagine doing this over the course of a larger network over the course of a year. You're talking about tens of millions of dollars in savings. Just by using the system, overlaying it on top of what's currently there, and nothing that's disrupting the operation, overlaying the system over top of what's there, basically just enhancing processes that are already happening, in your operation. So this is very significant, judging from the fact that it's disruption free. Now, again, I alluded to the multiple capabilities of skustream and the fact that it is flexible to provide a more specific capability to reslot, do a mass reslot rather. So in this case, the client was looking at replenishments within one of the first 4 sites. They wanted to reduce replenishments for their faster moving items. So it was decided to, while they were kind of getting these results, they were still getting the weekly results from their daily reslots and their daily new items being slotted optimally through the system. They decided to isolate about 4,000 or 5,000 items of their biggest offenders, biggest replenishment offenders, and do a mass reslot using the system. So same capabilities, same logic. They were able to utilize the execution tracking module within skustream to not only slot these based on the same logic that it was set up to optimize the building, but also to track to make sure these moves were actually being carried out on the floor. So that's a very big component of this, is if you're slotting this volume of items, you need to make sure that they're actually being reslotted on the floor, and that's kind of how you're going to get this at the end of the day, right? It doesn't just happen overnight. Items are reslotted, they're carried out on the floor, and then the labor, the savings and tasks are going to eventually get you to this number, which is the annualized savings number. So in this case, again, the objective is right here to reduce high replenishment SKUs, to reduce pallet putaways, pick shorts, and excessive tasks. And these are the number count here. So they did 530 items reslotted in the first week. That jumped up to 1238, all the way to 1622, and then down to 471. So we're talking about 3,000 to 5,000 items, I think it was, in total, This is a snapshot of the 4 weeks that were most impactful. And this was done again over the course of 4 weeks. So this is a bit more disruptive. This is a larger project, but it kind of goes to show that these are small projects that can be done. Usually it's historically for say a warehouse optimization consultant or a consultant doing this work. You'd find that you're doing mass slotting projects to reslot the entire operation. This takes multiple days, where there's huge disruption within the operation. When there's no ability or no system in place to carry this out week over week, and to get the savings that you're trying to get. This is a more surgical approach where you're looking at a specific labor task, and you're looking at a subset of items, basically the most valuable offenders in that task. So this is a very surgical approach. It's optional. These items would have fallen into the category of being reslotted, eventually, but this does end up paying off. It's a more immediate result. It takes a bit more time. It's a bit more disruptive, but it is a more immediate result. And these are the savings that were achieved through this 4-week campaign. So again, almost $400,000 of annualized savings from this project alone. And this is again on top of your savings that you're achieving week over week. So extremely significant, and these are savings that you're going to get right away, right? These items are being moved. So as soon as these items are being moved, the replenishment tasks are going down, your shorts are going down, and you're reducing your pallet putaways for your forklifters. So all in all, you're looking at $380,000 of expected annualized savings. So extremely impactful, whether it's these surgical reslotting campaigns, which again are optional for each client, or whether it's the annualized savings from daily slotting. You can see the numbers here. So all in all, we can see the bottom line really is combining habits and sprints equals compounding ROI. So again, that's the idea of the video today, is just to kind of go through this case study, to show you a bit of insight into our process, to add some context to the study itself. I hope that was fairly helpful. We may be doing this, if this was helpful, we get some good feedback on this video. We're going to be doing a few more. We have tons of projects to highlight, and this is just one of the many. But if you're interested in finding out more about skustream and how skustream may be able to help your operation, if you're exploring optimization systems, or you're encountering issues where you have high replenishments and you're wondering what the best way is to solve these issues, head over to www.skustream.com and find out more about the system. You can also book a demo, or you can talk to me or anybody here on the DC optimization team about skustream. We offer what we call a strategic opportunity assessment, which offers great insight to how much opportunity is available in your operations. We take 4 weeks of operational data from your system, and we run it through skustream, and it tells us essentially where the opportunity is. So that's actually how we got started with this client, is through most of our projects actually start with an opportunity assessment. Because if you can imagine, if you're going to go through with a major project like this, even if it's a very streamlined project, you still want to know what to expect, right? And that's what skustream provides through an SOA, through an opportunity assessment, is it provides, using your data, so it's based off of your operation, how much you can expect from the system. And that's sort of how we arrived at dealing with this client. And of course, I think we actually even surpassed. We're always very conservative with our opportunity assessments, but I think in this operation, in this specific subset of the case study, we actually surpassed our expectations. So, but it all starts there. So head over to skustream.com, find out more about the system. The best way to do that is to book a call with us. We'll take you through the system. We'll have to learn, of course, a little bit about your operation and your goals, but that's what I would recommend, is to have a chat with us. We'll take you through the system, and ultimately, if it's right for you, we'll figure out if a strategic opportunity assessment is a part of the next step. So I appreciate the time and going through this with me. Again, it's a very rough look at the case study. If you haven't seen this before and you wanted to kind of go through it yourself, make sure to follow us on LinkedIn. We should have a post up there, and it should be in our blog as well, in instantcontext.com. So until next time, appreciate the time and you took out your schedule to look at this video. And again, my name is Rob, VP of Customer Success, and thanks for joining us. Bye now.